Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be here. My name is Malicious, and I currently work as this modern workplace engineer with Lima. Lima is a professional business service that provides services to customers of any sort, ranging from consultancy, technical work, and all the rest of businesses. So Lima, big we are big on Microsoft technology, Citrix, networking, and the rest of other technologies. But yeah, so I'm not representing under Lima, so I'm speaking on behalf of for the community just to share my knowledge and also help the general, the general public as well. So I'll be kicking off with how to securely deploy Copilot in an organization. So I'll be sharing my screen now, and then I'll be happy if anyone, let me know if they can see my screen. Give me a moment. Sure, sure. So let me know once you can see my screen.
Not yet. Yep, it's coming up.
Right. So today we'll be discussing on how to securely manage Microsoft 365 Copilot deployment. And I'm going to make it a little bit more, straightforward rather than, making us waste much time speaking on different things. I'm going to make it go straight to the point, go direct to the deployment and why we need to do what we need to do and limitations and reasons why we, most probably need to use some technologies while considering doing this deployment. Um, so first, I want to go with discussing what Microsoft 365 and Azure licensing and what Microsoft 365 Copilot is. As we all know, Microsoft 365 and Azure are fully based on licensing and subscription based. And different platforms have different offerings. So with Microsoft Azure, so you have your infrastructure as a service, you have your um, software as a service, you have your platform as a service, and different services like desktop as a service when if you're using Azure Virtual Desktop. And with Microsoft Azure, so you get in service based on what you are paying for, and this is why we have something like pay as you go. So the services you consume are based on what you are really paying for. So the money you pay is what you get. And then Microsoft 365, in other hand, is the software as a service, which is big on subscription. So no matter what you are using, for you to be able to have full benefits of the solutions within Microsoft 365. So it's dependent on the licensing you have. So, and it differs from the way Azure works. For with 365, you get what you need by the license, and you don't necessarily need to pay by what the resources you're using. Rather, you pay for the licenses maybe monthly or annually or quarterly, depending on the agreement you have with Microsoft. And so this is what it's all about. And then Copilot, which Microsoft developed, is an AI agent, just like other LLM. So it helps you to do your work more active, at a more leave you to do your work more productive, bringing more productivity, and then automating some repetitive tasks, and then also helping teams' efforts in doing day-to-day tasks. And so, like I said about, the Microsoft 365 licensing, so having what you need to be able to deploy Copilot licensing is mostly based on the licensing you have. So, for instance, you have the Business Premium, you have the E3, you have the E5 licenses. So the E5 licenses are mostly known to have most of the advanced solutions which you need to be able to deploy your solutions, your security around Copilot, such as the DLP, which is data loss prevention, the data security platform management for AI, and then insider risk and OCR, which is optical character recognition. So all of this depends on the licensing you have. And then with all of these solutions, you will be able to restrict what Copilot would see, and you will also be able to manage organizational data because Copilot was developed in a way that it respects the permissions that your business have in place. So this is what all this is all about. Now, when it comes, so before I go on, so we are going to focus on, four key things to note while doing this deployment. So the first one is visibility, the second one is policy, and then the third one is education, and then the controls. So these are really key because it helps you to do an effective deployment on Copilot and also securing your organizational data because we don't want anyone outside in the world to be able to exfiltrate or steal information or mistakenly, share what they are not supposed to share. And this is where visibility comes in because when it comes to visibility, standpoint, you need to understand what what is it that is running within the business that I'm not seeing. And where this happens is because you cannot really for sure secure what you cannot see. So you need to understand what data that are running within your business, which where does this data live? Which people or entities or applications have access to this data? How are they being stored? And this is where all of these controls come in. Now, the first thing you need to do when you are trying to deploy, a Copilot is first, you need to review your SharePoint and OneDrive, their sharing settings because within OneDrive and SharePoint, so there is a settings where you can sort of download the reports of, permissions users get, where they are sharing files, which locations things are. So, and there is also within the advanced permission settings, so that you would be able to see what people are also sharing with guest users as well. And this is why you need to have this in place before you continue with your deployment. And then the second one is enabling the purview optical character recognition now. So why this is really important is it helps to capture the images on screenshots, sorry, it helps to capture text on images, screenshots, PDFs. So let's say, for instance, someone, uploads a sensitive information or someone takes a photo or screenshot of sensitive information and then upload it to, LLM or like ChatGPT or your Copilot. So here, the person is oversharing, sensitive information because these LLMs are designed in a way that they can easily copy off those tests and then give you a response, right? And in a situation where we don't want this to happen, we want to make sure that we take full controls of what people are doing. So this is where we need to enable the purview optical character recognition before we proceed with the deployment. And also, just for you to, take note for the OCR, so you would definitely need to have the Azure pay-as-you-go subscription. So for you to enable it, it does not the access to the feature is not license based, just like the other policies where you need to have E3 or E5 license. For this solution, you need to have the Azure subscription for it to be able to enable it. Now, another key area for us to focus on is enable the insider risk analytics. So this is where we gain the behavioral insights into user activities. We try to understand what users are doing. We try to get, the whole activities around users' behaviors, where they are sharing data from, what document do they have in. So it is really key to also enable these settings. And all of these settings are stored within the purview under settings. This is where you can get all of those. And the purview data security posture management for artificial intelligence, this is one of the most important area that you need to make sure you have enabled. And before you do all of this, you need to also make sure that you have the right permissions. You need to make sure you are a compliance, administrator. You have the e-discovery administrator permission or the e-discovery manager permission. So just to give a brief note on that, with the way Microsoft works. So even if you are the global administrator within Microsoft, within your tenant, for you to be able to do some tasks within Purview, you also need some specific permissions around there. So you need to ensure that you have the right, permissions. And the data security posture management for artificial intelligence helps you to manage what, you know, um, Copilot AIs, ChatGPT, Cloud for in case if you are using third-party AI. So it helps you with a good dashboard for you to track what these LLMs have access to within your environment. Um, it's very, it is very, it's very important in a way that it helps you to also know what you need to do and take actions like you can say, okay, I think these particular people are sharing some information, so maybe we need to um reduce their what they can access. And the dashboard also have recommendations. So for instance, so let's say if you don't have any clue on what is going on within the business and you want to proactively manage it and without any further ado. So Microsoft has a very good recommendations that you can implement to make sure that how users are sharing their data across, Copilot or across any LLM are safe. Another one we also need to focus on is enabling the unified audit login. Now, I need to make it, I need to make it, noteworthy that we need to understand that for us to have all these assets. So also we need to make sure that we have the Copilot licenses assigned to users that we need them to, make use of the Copilot. And we definitely need the audit login because it helps us to see what users are doing. So in order for you to stay in a very good place, so it is very important that you create a customized policy, maybe for 10 years, depending on your licensing, to audit what users are doing. And Microsoft has included, Copilot auditing, where you can have a look to see what users are doing and what information they are sharing and what data. So this is what audit logging helps you to do. And then last, like I mentioned, the assigning the purview admin roles are very, very, very key. So you need to make sure that you just have, the compliance admin, purview admin, e-discovery, depending on what the role is, so that they can be able to carry out their job successfully. Now, on the policy side, so the policy is where you decide to, you know, put in controls to how you want to set up how you want to set up controls on what the data that is already existing within your environment. Now the good thing is that now we have visibility, we understand where our users are going in, and we understand what they are sharing. And what this does is it helps us to make decisions on the type of policies that we want to set up. And this is where we now need to think, okay, after we have done some audit logging, we can see that some users are sharing this, sensitive information. What policy do we need to come in, get in? And this is where we need to extend these policies using DLP policies. And the good thing about the DLP policy is that it extends to Copilot in a sense that if you want to restrict what users can do. So you can put it on that location. You can say, you can put the policy on, the Copilot location, and then depending on what sensitivity information, what sensitive information you want to protect, what document, what information you need, which would be derived from what you have seen within your business. And for me, I usually, recommend using sensitivity info types where you put in your keywords or you put in your informations to ingest to make sure that you're getting the right data secured. And now another way we can, set up what we can manage is also when we need to do conditional, as when we need to configure our conditional access policy. So we can set up a conditional access policy, using putting a session control where we don't want users to download sensitive information to their devices. And this is where, conditional access policy comes in. We can put in multi-factor authentication to say before anyone can access this document, please request them to, complete multi-factor authentication. And this is really key because it also helps us to, be compliant and also helps us in securing our data. So, another key thing we want to put in mind is the applying of sensitivity label. Now, sensitivity label offers great, benefits in the sense that you can put controls of what information that you don't want Copilot to extract. And the good thing is that when you put on a sensitivity label, and let's say you apply it to some users, and then there are informations or documents you are encrypting or you are securing, don't want anyone to, see it, even if some users, see those information or for some reason they try to, put some prompt on Copilot and they see it, they won't also be able to see it because those information are not scoped to them. So these are the key things that you need to also put in place. And Copilot or responsibly, obeys sensitivity labels because if you put on some controls to like not no don't extract, so it's actually respects that, and we need to make sure that we have all put all these controls in place before we deploy Copilot. Then another one we want to do is we will also want to make sure that we have our retention policies in place where we need to set up, our retention policies to meet our audits, our compliance standards, so that we can always have something we can always go back to see if there are some things that are going wrong or if there are things that we always need to, come back to and tighten up. And this is where we have the retention policies in place. Now, so going next to the other slide is the user education. Um, for me, I think the user education is very, very key and very, very important because our users are also strong hold of what we do as, as a business or as a or as an organization. So when deciding how to put all of these controls in place, I think it's really key to make sure that these are really, taken note of. And this is where we need to make sure that um, we are doing the right education for our users because Copilot cannot really see what you do not give it. And this is where we need to tell users, learn how, tell our users to learn how to minimize the type of information or documents, they want to share with, Copilot. So we need to teach them how to not, upload informations that are deemed sensitive, how not to, maybe upload financial records or data or stuff like, or, most things that we deem um, that we feel like they are secret to the organization, letting them know that we are also, monitoring who is going, a contrast to these, policies that has been put in place by the business. Another one is prompt. Now we need to, tell users how they can prompt, how they can just to make sure that the data are being, handled, responsibly, how they should not, copy any generative, prompt from any LLM because there could be some embedded, prompt with some malicious intent or malicious, um, information that could, inject, the LLM too. So we need to, let users, teach them how to, to prompt for instance, you can say, summarize, the financial record or doing this or please can you act as this and advise us on that. So you can, depending on your organizational information, so you can try to learn how you can tell us that information. And then on the sensitivity levels, we need to determine access. We need to understand that Copilot honors, the permissions we have around these controls.
Hey,
We need
Mel,
to, yeah,
I'll just let you know, you've had 20 minutes. We'll be moving to the next speaker at 30 past. So if we want a bit of Q&A, you might want to just spend, no more than a few more minutes to wrap up the presentation.
yeah. So,
Right.
so
Thank you.
yeah, so we need to, understand all of that. And then the screenshot and the images scan. So also need to enable this and then also explain that to customers as well. So our customers and our users, then also show them, the type of, prompt they can use for an example, especially which are aligned to business policies. And then the last is, the controls that we need to put in place. So we need to ensure that we enforce identity and device control, such as multi-factor authentication, conditional access policies. We need to make sure that all of these are in place, depending on our devices and depending on the businesses. So these are the things that we need to, understand and then put them in place so that we are not, sharing information that are not supposed to be there. Then we also need to enable restricted SharePoint search, which is limited. The search point you can scope this via PowerShell, so there is no control, within the GUI. But Microsoft actually have, the commands that you can use to do that. And also, if we decide that we don't want users to be, getting informations from outside of the business. So we want everything Copilot will give us should be within the business. This is where we, disable the web search toggle. But the person that can do this should be the global administrator who have a full access to, the Copilot Copilot admin center. So this is something that we also need to put in place. And then we have another one, which is the DLP policies, of course. So the DLP policies is very important and key. And we also need to consider that while we are scoping our permissions, to data, to users, and all of that. Then the next we also need to put in place is enable, insider risk policies. And the insider risk policies helps in user controls. It's more like a behavioral analytics that evaluates what users are sharing internally. And in, putting, it helps in protecting data and information that are being used within the business. And the last is also having deploy, the Microsoft Defender for cloud apps, and then Sentinel, which we use Sentinel to manage, monitor what is going on, and then we can use cloud apps to um sanction some applications we don't want our users to, get to, or some sites which our users are going to, or we don't want our users to, have access to. So this is where all of this need, come to place. So once you have been able to put all of these controls in, so you will definitely be able to proactively secure your organizational business data, and then you should also be able to, deploy your Copilot successfully after rigorous pilot testing without compromising data, but rather promoting organizational entire business productivity. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so thank you so much. Yeah, so this is conclusion. So this platform things we definitely need to put in place. We need to make sure that we have our E5 because E5 have most of the licensing security that we need for this. And we also need to ensure we have Azure pay-as-you-go subscription as well. And then everything I've discussed, such as the visibility, policy, education, controls, also needs to come to play here as well, just to make sure that we are successfully deploying Copilot, without, compromising data or information. Yeah. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Mel.